McKinley Morganfield arrived into the world on April 4, 1913, in Jugg's Corner, a patch of Mississippi not far from Rolling Fork. Life there moved slowly, shaped by the rhythms of labor, the pulse of the river, and the sting of poverty. His mother passed away when he was just a toddler. With her gone, he was sent to live with his grandmother, Della Grant, on the Stovall plantation near Clarksdale. She called him Muddy because of his constant affinity for puddles and creeks. As he grew, the nickname stuck, gaining another layer with age, Muddy Waters. The fields he worked by day and the porches where he heard songs at dusk left their mark on him. The air was thick with hardship, but the music cut through it. Field hollers, spirituals, and bottleneck guitars flowed all around, forming an invisible education that would outlast any classroom. By his teenage years, Muddy had picked up the harmonica. He taught himself guitar soon after, learning by watching others and mimicking what he heard on shellac records. Son House, Charlie Patton, and Robert Johnson weren't names, yet whispered in classrooms. They were legends passed by word of mouth and sound. Muddy soaked them in like rain. In 1941, fate knocked on his door in the form of two men from the Library of Congress, Alan Lomax and John Work. They were on a mission to document rural American music, and someone told them about a guy on Stovall Plantation who played guitar like no other. Lomax recorded Muddy singing and playing in his cabin. Those rough, raw takes lit a fire in him. When he heard his own voice on a record for the first time, a light bulb switched on. "Man, this boy can make a record," he said of himself. In 1943, with $22 and a suitcase, Muddy moved to Chicago. He took the train north like thousands of other African Americans during the Great Migration, seeking better pay and a sliver of dignity. The city brought him factory work by day and blues clubs by night. It also brought noise, louder crowds, faster tempos, and the need to rise above it all. So Muddy plugged in his guitar and found electricity, not just in the socket, but in the crowd's reaction. He made his first Chicago recordings in 1946, but they went nowhere. It wasn't until 1948 when he cut I Can't Be Satisfied and I Feel Like Going Home for Aristocrat Records, soon to become Chess, that he finally broke through. Those tracks weren't polite, and they didn't ask for approval. They were defiant, soaked in grit, and cut through the air like a saw. Chicago blues had found its anchor. As the 1950s began, Muddy Waters became a force on the Chicago scene. Leonard Chess recognized the fire in him and kept the studio rolling. With players like Little Walter on harmonica, Jimmy Rogers on rhythm guitar, Otis Spann on piano, and Willie Dixon writing many of the tunes, Muddy crafted a sound that wasn't just electric, it was seismic. Rollin' Stone, Hoochie Coochie Man, Manish Boy, and I'm Ready didn't just light up jukeboxes, they announced something new, the swagger of post-war blues with shoulders squared and volume turned up. These songs were dirty, raw, and unfiltered. They weren't meant to entertain so much as to claim territory. It was Muddy, growling from behind the mic, guitar slung low, daring anyone to challenge him. His music became the blueprint for the next generation. Young kids in England were spinning his records, learning guitar licks off his solos. In the U.S., he filled clubs across the Midwest, eventually headlining concerts from coast to coast. Yet for all his growing reputation, he still battled racism in hotels, bars, and boardrooms. His success didn't insulate him. It magnified the contradictions of being a black man in Jim Crow America. Off stage, Muddy was both complicated and deeply human. He married multiple times and fathered several children, including Big Bill Morganfield and Larry Mud Morganfield, who would go on to carry his torch. At home, he was known to be loving but also headstrong, maintaining tight control over his business and his band. He knew what he wanted, and he rarely let go once he had a grip. But fame brought pressures. He was a proud man who hated being exploited. Arguments with Leonard Chess over royalties and creative control were frequent. As musical tastes began to shift in the early 60s, Muddy found himself at odds with the industry. Chess tried to update his sound with horn sections and studio polish. The results were mixed. The raw edge was softened, and it didn't sit well with him or his fans. Still, he remained a draw, especially in Europe. In 1964, he toured the UK with the American Folk Blues Festival, exposing audiences to authentic electric blues. Young British acts like the Rolling Stones, Cream, and Led Zeppelin would later admit they owed everything to him. The Rolling Stones even named themselves after his song, Rollin' Stone. By the late 60s, Muddy's records weren't selling like they once had, but he kept touring, kept playing, and kept pushing. In 1971, he left Chess and signed with Blue Sky Records under the wing of Johnny Winter. That partnership proved fruitful. Winter respected him, didn't try to fix what wasn't broken, and produced 3 of Muddy's best late-career albums, Hard Again, I'm Ready, and King Bee. The albums brought him a new audience, hippies, blues rock fans, and young listeners hungry for authenticity. His voice, gruffer now, had lost none of its bite. He played with the fire of a man with nothing to prove, but everything still to say. Songs like Bus Driver, The Blues Had a Baby and They Named It Rock and Roll, and the live shows that followed captured a man recharged. This period also earned him his first Grammy Awards. While hardware had never been his motivation, the recognition came as a satisfying turn after decades of industry indifference. The same man who once played for spare change on Chicago's South Side was now honored by the establishment. Muddy kept performing well into the early 80s, but age and illness began to take their toll. He battled pneumonia, suffered several health scares, and his stamina began to wane. Still, he took the stage whenever he could. Fans watched with reverence, aware that they were witnessing the last roars of a lion. His final public performance came in 1982, when he joined Eric Clapton at a concert in Florida. It was a symbolic passing of the torch, though Muddy, even weakened, held the flame high. He returned to his home in Westmont, Illinois, where he spent his last months surrounded by family. On April 30th, 1983, Muddy Waters passed away in his sleep. He was 70 years old. The music world paused to remember the man who had done so much with so little. His funeral drew musicians from every corner of the industry, bluesmen, rockers, gospel singers, all there to pay tribute to a man who had never changed his tune to suit anyone. Muddy's house in Westmont became a shrine of sorts. Fans left flowers on his doorstep, played his records on old turntables, and named their bands in his honor. Statues were proposed, tributes rolled in. But the greatest recognition came in the way his music lived on, in the riffs stolen, borrowed, or lovingly reinterpreted by generations of musicians. He never had a #1 pop hit. He wasn't a regular on talk shows. He didn't play Madison Square Garden. Yet his influence rippled through every amplifier turned up loud, through every power chord played by a wide-eyed teenager, through every husky voice trying to reach deeper than the lyrics alone. The blues was never about polish. It was about truth. Muddy Waters embodied that truth with every word, every growl, and every bent note. He didn't invent the blues, but he redefined it for the modern age. His sound became the foundation for everything that came after, from Chuck Berry's Quicksilver riffs to Hendrix's soaring solos. The man who once bottled moonshine on a plantation went on to inspire kings of music on both sides of the Atlantic. His story was never about awards, but about persistence. He played because he had to. He sang because there were stories no one else could tell. And he plugged in because the world needed to hear him loud and clear. Muddy Waters never asked for your sympathy. He asked you to listen.